Okay, Rabbi Isai, let's go for it. We're going to have some fun here. Okay. Yuchsin, adoption, Geirus, IVF. We'll have some fun with all this stuff. We're gonna have some real fun. We're gonna have some real fun. Today's news, I didn't see today's news. All right, we'll have to find out. Okay, we're gonna have some fun, guys. It's gonna be a little wild. Sit back and relax. All right. Now, the first mitzvah of the Torah is Puravu. Not Shabbos, not your Hashem. Puravu is the first mitzvah, to have children. So it's a mitzvah is on the man to have children, as we have a smichus in the pasuk to kivush, to conquering battle, soldier, front lines. This used to be a time that it wasn't controversial to say that's a man's job. And if kivush is a man's job, then so too is puravu. It's a mitzvah of a man. However, a woman does have a mitzvah to assist, in the broader sense, to assist her husband. But the man is the one with the ikar mitzvah of puravu, and a man therefore has the chiyuv to try to get married to a woman who's capable of having children. Okay. Now we paskin to be mekayim the mitzvah. Somebody needs one boy and one girl in order to be mekayim the mitzvah. That's how we paskin. Once somebody has already had a boy and a girl, now there is a lower level mitzvah, midivrei neviim, l'sheves yitzra. We have mitzvah populating the world, and you're mekayim that with additional children. Now, fine. Why is this mitzvah dafka on the man and not on the woman? So there's two theories in the Mefarshim as to why the chiyuv is specifically on the man. Either we don't need to be mechayev the woman because it is her natural desire anyways to have children, so therefore we don't need to be mechayev her, she's going to want it anyways. Or option number two, which is kind of the opposite, since childbirth is considered pekuach nefesh, therefore we're not going to be mechayev a woman to put herself in a matzav of pekuach nefesh. Okay, now, due to medical and scientific advancement over the generations, we have less issues of people not being able to have children. A lot of those have been able to get figured out, but that has made many new halachic shaylas, many new questions have come to the floor. Now, and these questions, more than the questions of whether somebody's mekayim puravu, we're going to have even more important questions of yichus. Who's considered the parents? Mamzerim. Let's find out. So nowadays, start off with some interesting stuff, some fresh stuff in the last couple of years. A woman who can't have children due to the fact she doesn't have a uterus, a rechem, as we call it in Chazal. She could actually have a uterus transplant from another woman, and then she could have children. They've done a couple of these already, and probably will get more popular, I imagine, as time goes on. So, whose baby is it? Is it the donor's baby because it was born through the donor's rechem, or is it the recipient's baby because she's the one who bore the child? So we say that's simple. That's simple.
Surrogacy would be the same child.
Surrogacy is going to be more complex. We'll get to surrogacy soon. Surrogacy is much more complex. But over here, this is pretty simple. Because when the recipient receives that organ, the rechem, the uterus, that now becomes koine to the recipient. The recipient becomes part of their body. Once it becomes part of the body of the recipient, and now the recipient lady has a child using that rechem, it is that recipient birthing mother is the one that's considered the mother l'kulei alma, and we treat that as a vaday psak, and I think there's not so much to argue against that, because once again, that body part is now batal to the mother, and now is batal to the recipient, and becomes part of the recipient. Okay. Now, some couples cannot have issues getting pregnant, having a child, and there is a solution, which is called, there's a couple of different solutions, but we're going to focus on the most common one, which is called IVF. Now, what IVF is, that we take, the doctors take the eggs out of the body of the mother, take the zera it was taken from the body of the husband. I'm not going to get too in detail of how we get it, but the zera comes from the body of the husband. The doctors put the zera from the zera of the man into the egg of the woman, create an embryo outside of the body, and then they take that embryo and they stick it implanted into the woman's body, and she becomes impregnated from that embryo. And that is the process of IVF. Now the question is, when if somebody has children in such a fashion, has the man been mekayim the mitzvah of peruvu? So the Meister Moshe and most poskim say that the husband has been mekayim the mitzvah of peruvu in such a fashion. Since it's his zera that contributed to creating that baby, he is mekayim peruvu. Now famously, according to the Satmar Rebbe, and this was one of the biggest fights of all time for those that know, that he said it's also to do that. First of all, it's zera levatola. That was his first thing. And he held you're not even mekayim the mitzvah. And a whole mitzvah baba avera. And he fought it like crazy. This was fights for years and years. Ramosha Feinstein got a brick through his window for this one. It was a big machlokes. So the Maisa, Satmar Rav says it is Asur Zera Latola. I'm not going to go too in detail on that part of the sugya, but that was the famous machlokes. Now, the minhag in most circles is that we do allow IVF in a case of need. If there's a couple that's having a hard time getting pregnant, having a child, in almost all circles, I believe, I don't know about the Chassidish circles, I'm not sure, but definitely in most circles, the minhag is that we do rely on this. Now, sometimes it's more problematic than that. And sometimes there's a problem with the actual husband or wife in bearing children. So, for example, sometimes there's a problem in the husband. The husband's zera isn't capable of growing into a child for whatever reason. Now, the doctors can perform IVF, but using, instead of the husband's zera, they could use a donor zera. They could use it from somebody else. And use that and put it into the wife's eggs and create an embryo and implant it into the wife. Is that allowed? Satmar Rebbe said, no way. No way. Gilui Arayos. Well, we'll see about Mamzer in a second. But the Satmar Rebbe said, Gilui Arayos, no way, it's not allowed. You cannot do such a thing. Because, and if the donor is a Jew, Mamzer. If the donor is a Goy, then it's not Mamzer. Because that's just, we paskin, the halacha is Goy to Eishes is not a Mamzer. So, but it's a horrible thing. It's the worst thing in the world you could do. It's Gilei Arayos, medically assisted Gilei Arayos. That's what the Satmar Rebbe says. Ramosha, he adamantly disagreed with this, and he says, not Gilei Arayos, it's the greatest mitzvah. And it was mamash a fight. Listen, these people can't have children. Now she could have a child like this. If there's no maisa done, it's not znus. Znus is only via a maisa isser. There's no maisa isser involved when the doctor goes with his syringe and however he does it. There's no maisa isser. There's no gilei reyes. Mitzvah gedola to bring more yidden into the world. The mitzvah gedola. I'm adding a little. Really, it's not because the husband's not been mekayim the mitzvah. So it's not really the mitzvah of peruvu, but it's the mitzvah of populating the world. So I'm adding a little fun to it. But the Ramosha says it's definitely a great thing to do. I don't remember his exact wording when he used the term mitzvah gedola or not, but he's definitely pro this event. Okay. Now, fine. Now sometimes let's make it a little bit more interesting. Now, sometimes a woman can't. Her body isn't producing the proper eggs, or there are eggs but they're not. There's a problem with them, whatever it is, and the woman's body is not producing. So could we take a donor egg from a different woman, the doctors take out, and then take the husband's zera, and the doctor takes the husband's zera, puts it into the donor egg. On this petri dish grows a embryo and takes that embryo and puts it into the wife who doesn't have eggs or doesn't have good eggs, puts it into the wife's body, and the wife has a baby. So is that allowed? Is that okay? So Ramosha was not around for this. This developed after Ramosha's time, so we don't know what Ramosha would say. I'm sure I know what the Satmar Rebbe would say. So once again, I agree. There's a good argument to say this is the same exact thing. Huh? I don't know what Rav David Feinstein says. I'm going to assume he's going to be mater in a minute, but I don't actually know. So the chayra, it's the same thing. Once again, once you hold of the yichud of Rav Moshe, that there is no znus without a meisa isser, so there's no meisa isser here. So the chayra, there's no znus. Memela, it should be fine. Now, therefore, one thing I forgot to mention, I just wanted to. Well, we'll talk about whose egg it is in a second. I actually want to go back once you're mentioning that. I want to point that I forgot. What is it better to use when we're talking about the zerav coming from a donor? Is it better for the donor to be a yid or a goy? So at first glance, you would think, yid. You want to use good Yiddish genes in creating this child. However, we're going to almost always use a goyish donor for two reasons. First of all, getting the zera is very complicated in terms of the hilchos zera levatala. So when you're using a goy, you don't have those issues. And number two, there's potential mamzeris issues that the Satmar Rebbe was talking about, even though Rav Moshe didn't care about it. And in Rav Moshe's first three tshuvas, he was perfectly fine using a Jew because he held it's pashut, not mamzeris. But in his fourth tshuva, he caved in a little bit to the Satmar Rebbe. He gave in a little bit, and he said, you know what? It's better to use a goy, therefore you don't even open up the shayla of mamzeris. But it could be that I think Rav Moshe Be'etzim didn't change. I think Rav Moshe Be'etzim would hold it's not mamzeris. But since there were opinions out there that would think from a Jewish donor it would be mamzeris, therefore it's better to use a goyish donor not to get involved.
The issue is if it's a multiple.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. 500 kids.
Correct. I'm gonna get back again in a second. There's another potential issue when it comes to donors. But you don't necessarily, but it's a little complicated whether you solve it when it's a guy, but to some degree you definitely solve it. Generally the way that it works is the people that are donors are repeat donors, usually. There's people that do this often for whatever reason. So therefore, there could be a guy who does this, 3 times a week, and he shows up there, and he's been doing it for 15 years. This guy could have 250 kids running around. Now, if you're talking about, Maimonides Hospital, and somebody's doing this 250 times, has 250 kids being born in Maimonides Hospital, this could be a problem. Because for all you know, it's, you have siblings getting married to each other. Who's going to be able to keep track of this? Who's going to know? It's all anonymous. However, when it's a goyish donor, there's an advantage, because we be'etzim hold that when it comes to goyim, there's only yichus from the mother, not from the father. And therefore, we're not going to have the issue. Now, it happens to be if you would know that it was miyuchas to a father, it may not be so simple that we would allow, let's say they were Megayer, 2 siblings, who know that they have the same father. Not so simple we would allow them to get married. But be'etzim, on a general point, we generally hold that yichus follows the mother, especially in cases when we don't know what's flying. Fine. Okay, fine. Now, we're back to the woman who got the donor egg. So the Maisa, is this allowed? So Rav Moshe wasn't allowed, or wasn't around. The Shevet Levi, Reb Chaim Kanievsky, and Rav Moshe Sternbach all say you're not allowed to do this. They do not allow. I heard a share from Russia Weiss, which he was going into super detail about who's considered the mother, which we're going to get into in a couple minutes. But it seemed very clear that he held you are allowed to do this. They say, I didn't see this inside, but I heard that, I don't know if it was a reliable source or not, but I heard that Rav Yashiv and Shlomo Zalman also said you're allowed to do this. There is an organization in America called PUA, which they're very involved in this, anything in the sugya, but they definitely do this. And they have a whole slew of Rabbanim that give haskamas on the organization, of big name Rabbanim across the board, from Hasidish, Ashkenazi, Sephardi, everything, all big names across the board. I don't know, I didn't check in to whoever they put on their website if they are exactly matter this, but they're definitely doing this, and there's lots of names on their website, so I'm assuming some of them actually are really matter. Okay. Fine. Now, sometimes the issue is the opposite. We're going to discuss who's the mother in a minute, but sometimes the issue is the opposite. The woman is able to create eggs that are viable. However, she physically cannot hold a pregnancy. She cannot take that egg, she miscarries for whatever reason consistently because there's something wrong with her being able to hold the baby. Right? So this is definitely a metzias that women have. So could you go and have the doctors take an egg from the mother, take the zera from the wife, I'm saying say the better. Take the egg from the wife, take the zera from the husband, take the zera, put it into the egg of the wife, and then take that, create an embryo, and take that embryo and put it into a surrogate mother, into a different random woman that they paid to hold the child and deliver the child. Could that be done? So, is there any problem with this?
Well, depends on the mother.
Well, we'll get into the mother is in a second, but
The food that the mother eats or something?
yeah, maybe tumtum alev, maybe ashka, but pure halacha. Is this going to be a problem? So the chayra, listen, you still do have the zera of the husband going into this random woman. So it doesn't sound so cool. So, but lemaisa, we're going to see that's the same shayla. It seems to be that the same people that are aser on the one way are going to aser the other way. Now, by the way, when you use a egg donor, what type of woman should you use? Are you better to use a Jewish woman or a non-Jewish woman?
Non-Jewish. Well, depends. Either way, there's a minor.
So the disadvantage of using a non-Jewish woman is that we're going to see in a second that there's going to be some debate as to who's my mother. Yeah, there's going to be a debate of who's the mother. So on the tzad that the mother is the birthing mother, is the egg mother. I'm sorry. If the egg donor is the mother, then if it's a guy, you're going to have some Geirus. So therefore, it's better for a Jew. If the egg donor.
Egg donor is Jewish.
If the egg donor is a non-Jew, there's Geirus issues. If the egg donor is a Jew, there is no Geirus issues. However, one has to be careful that there's no mamzerus. What type of mamzerus issues could there be? First of all, if the egg donor is a married woman, that's going to be a real problem. According to the Satmar Rebbe camp, we'll call it, but it seems like there's others on board as well. But according to the Satmar Rebbe camp, it's for sure that's a mamzer, that baby. So therefore, that would be a problem from a married woman. What about a single woman? So a single woman would be fine to use a Jewish single woman, no gerus required. You just have to make sure that that single woman is not a mamzeris herself, and number two, that this child that's born never goes and marries the kids of that single woman. So how are you going to avoid it? So when that child comes to the time of shidduchim, if they're marrying into a family of 10 children, those children probably were not born from donor eggs. Usually, once again, the women who donate eggs also donate a lot of eggs. So usually, it's not gonna. If there's 10 kids, it's not from donor eggs. And if you're marrying into a family, if this donor egg baby, is marrying into a family that has 1, 2, 3 kids or whatever, 1 or 2 kids, so that person should probably be mechuyev to ask, is this kid is the kala from a donor egg? Why do you ask? Yeah. So, and if they say taka, I don't know how it works in Eretz Yisrael. In America, you get the birthday of the donor. You don't get the name, but you get the birthday of the donor. So if you get the birthday of the donor, then you'll know, and then you'll know. You match up, keep that birthday, and if she says, "Oh, taka, I'm from a donor egg," what's the birthday? If the birthdays match, you got a problem here.
What if he's born Benish
Good Shayla. We'll have to think about that. Lemaisa, even though it sounds like such a beautiful idea for this lady that can't give birth for a single sister to donate the eggs, no, it's not a good idea. Don't go there. Because then you're going to get Aches Isha type arayas, potentially. Okay, let's keep on going. So, Lemaisa, who's my mother? Who's the mother of this donor egg baby? Whether we're talking about the surrogate or whether we're talking about the donor egg, who's the mother when you had one mother? So the mother that contributed the egg, you got to realize this baby is going to have complete DNA and genetic makeup of the egg donor. Complete DNA genetic makeup. However, where was the baby born from? The baby was born from the birthing mother. So, who's the real mother? So I heard from Rav Asher Weiss, he said, this is a shayla that we need a Rambam or a Ramban to answer. There's a couple of rayas that people try to get throughout Shas, and Bekitzer, none of them are close. It's not like it's a pretty good raya, but there's a slight, all the rayas, most of the rayas you could pretty much say, okay, nice raya, but shaykhs, that doesn't really, it's not a raya. So there's no real rayas from Shas, and therefore we don't really have a raya, and therefore Rav Asher Weiss says you have to be machmer both ways. Yashav and Rosh Zalman say you have to be machmer both ways. So as we said, what's nafkamina to who the mother is? So if one's Jewish and one's not Jewish, then let's say the donor is a non-Jew, Geirus l'chumra. If the surrogate mother is not Jewish, which is most of the time going to be the case by a surrogate mother, it's very hard to get a frum lady to carry a baby. And a single frum girl to carry a baby for you is going to be a hard one. Maybe you get a single not from, maybe. But it's going to be difficult. Yeah? For other people, she did? Interesting. Okay. Very good. But it's going to be hard to find. I guess somebody found. Yeah, Kesev Yana is the call. I know that in the Chazal. But, all right, Chiddush. Okay. But it's difficult, but I understand why they did it. Okay. Now, also there's going to be, the kid's going to have a suffix who to do kibbut aim to. Kibbut aim. Who does it go to? So you have to be machmer both ways. Suffix the reis l'chumra. What about Yerusha? So he's a suffix. The baby is a suffix Yerush. If the boy, right, this boy is a suffix Yerush of the mother. I guess if they're real children, full children, they don't have to say. They can say Mitzvah Chayra Varaya. But the Chayra, if he's typhus, the son is typhus from the mother, or he's a suffix Yerush, the Chayra, the other full children do not have a right to grab it away from him. Interesting. I don't know if this has ever gone to Besdin, but it would be fun. Fun. Now, yeah, and by the way, they're also going to have to both be makbid on the arayas on both mothers. Both, whichever way it would be arayas, you have to be makbid on that. Okay, fine. Now, is it a good thing for a older single girl to freeze her eggs? It's something that's become much more common. It's a new thing in the last 10 years. You have a girl who's in her low to mid-30s. She's not married yet. Now it's just a little mitzias. When a lady's in her 33 years old or whatever, her eggs are generally still very fertile, very easy to get impregnated. When a woman turns 40 or so, some women still could, and some women can't anymore. A good percentage of women cannot get pregnant when they're 40 anymore. However, the body could safely be pregnant up until like age 50 or so. A body could safely be pregnant. Yeah, I know, not everybody's Rav Tzvika Shaleski here, you know what I'm saying? But normally, it's not normal. But whatever you could do, up to 50, it could be done. Now, so this lady, when she's 33, let's say she's going to get married in 6 years or 8 years. At that point, it might be too late for her to have children, this 33-year-old single girl. So what about her freezing her eggs now? And then if she gets married, let's say she's 38 in 5 years, she could try to have kids naturally. If it doesn't work, then do it with IVF and be able to get impregnated with these frozen eggs. Could that be done? And the answer is yes. Seemingly, most of the places that I haven't seen anybody against it. I don't see any issue against it. It is perfectly fine for her to freeze her eggs. It's expensive though, but it's seemingly perfectly fine to do it. However, there are in Eretz Yisrael and America, there are organizations that give hashkacha on this, meaning you have to make sure that your eggs don't disappear and get mixed up with other eggs. So you should have extra hashkacha to make sure that things are done properly, and your eggs are your eggs, and your Jewish eggs aren't going somewhere else, and whatever. But once you're making sure that there's no problems, l'chayra, it's fine. L'chayra, there's no issue.
You're just talking about a case where she's freezing it to get married, but let's say she's freezing it to get a donor zera at some point in time. That's mashra acher.
For who to be...
The lady's 39 or 38, she's 33. She wants to have a kid without getting married.
Right. Oh, so I'm going to get to that in a second. Actually, not a second, but I was playing it later, but I'll talk about it now. Let's forget about the freezing. You're talking about Shayla, nothing to do with freezing. You have a 35-year-old lady, and she has a good job. She's very on top of things in life, everything, and she wants to have a kid like all other women, or most other women that want to have a kid. She wants to have a kid. She's not married. Okay, so you can't have everything. And she wants to have a kid. So she's going to take her own eggs, get some donor zera, just like the woman who couldn't have kids for the reason that her husband had a problem. She can't have kids for the reason that she doesn't have a husband. So she'll get some donor zera, put it with her eggs, get it pregnant, she'll have a kid. Beautiful. The Shevis Yitzra, populate the world with Yidden. Is that a good thing? Now, you can't. It's very difficult to actually find a pure Isser in this. Once again, you could start going with Isser of Zera L'Tal, but even it's Kodesh Zera, so it's hard Zera L'Tal. It's hard to. It's very. I can't find the Isser to point on this woman and say what you're doing is Asser. It doesn't feel right. It doesn't sound right. I don't think, it's a bad thing to, take away. You're going to have all these feminist women who are going to say, we don't need to get married anymore. We could have our children without husbands. And no, it doesn't sound like it's heading in the right direction. But if you're asking, could I actually point the Isser at them? I can't find an Isser. Yeah, I saw this brought up. There's no, we're not going to give our stempel to it, but there's no real Isser.
About encouraging promiscuity and having kids without fathers.
Correct, and then when you also, this woman gets pregnant, this single girl, and then you claim this and claim that, I'm even Yovan. It's not a good matzif. Okay, now let's see what else we have here. What about this? Is it a good thing for, let's say you have a single girl, right? She's 25 years old. A single girl, I don't care how old she is, right? A single girl with strong genes, right? Healthy, smart, etc. Strong genes, single girl. Is it a good thing for her to donate eggs? So I was thinking about it. L'chayra, there's nothing really wrong with it. L'chayra, it's a good chesed to do. Once again, I'm not meant to throw it out there by random organization. To give it to one of these firm organizations that have hashkacha, and they're setting up women that can't have kids. I don't know. I'm not saying from Paiskim. I didn't see Paiskim on this. I didn't see anybody discuss it. But I was thinking about it. L'chayr, it's a good thing. I think the single girl will have to, when she eventually gets married and eventually has her own kids, just be careful to make sure that your kids aren't going to be marrying siblings. So therefore, once again, if it's America, as I said, your birthday is given out. If it's going to a family that only has a couple of kids, then just confirm that, say I once donated, so I just want to make sure these aren't from donor eggs. I don't know. L'chayr, it's a beautiful thing. I don't know. L'chayr, it's a beautiful thing. But once again, I can imagine somebody screaming about it. I agree. My first natia was like, no. I'm like, I don't know. Sounds fine. Okay. Guys don't like it. Okay, it's okay. Fine. Here's something interesting. The way that it works is when they do IVF, they take out multiple. They don't just take out one egg at a time because one egg, you don't know what your chances are. They take out 15, 20 eggs at a time, and then they start putting the zera into the eggs, making embryos. They make a bunch of embryos, and then they choose one of the very healthy embryos and they implant it into the woman. So the others, depending on the quality, if they're very low quality, then they get rid of it. If they're very low quality, but if they're decent quality and up, they freeze it for potential next month, or if it doesn't work out, or the following month, or what, for future times. Now, apparently they still work fine after you freeze them. So what's going to happen is they do testing on the embryo. They want to give the healthiest embryo. So they test the embryo and they do all types of tests, genetic testing, etc. And they actually find out whether the embryo is a male embryo or a female embryo. Is there anything, can I go and decide whether I want a boy or want a girl? Is there any issue with that?
Can you decide if you want them to be a mortgage broker or a cash advance?
I don't think you could tell from the genetic test.
You can tell what kind of eyes they want.
You might be able to, maybe.
Tall or short or whatever.
You probably could. But the most common thing that they do tell you is that they could tell you boy or girl. So could you decide? Yes. Why not? What's this, sir? Yes. You could tell. Now there's a shayla. What about somebody who they already have a bunch of boys or they have a bunch of girls. They have, 6 girls already. They want a boy. And or vice versa. They have 6 boys and they want a girl already. They say, I'm fed up with this. I can't take my chances anymore. We're doing IVF. We do IVF. And then we'll get the embryos. And I'll choose. I had 6 girls already. I'm going to choose a boy. Is that allowed? So the nice Paiskim are not cool with this. Because the whole concept of IVF, which I didn't get into super detail with this, but there are halachic concessions when it comes to Zerah Vatala to get the male ingredient. And therefore, to just do that to pick out a boy or a girl, we are not cool with that. We do not do that. But it's interesting. Okay. Now, next shayla. Is somebody in Mekayim the mitzvah of pruruvu with an adopted child? For some reason, some women, this doesn't work out. There's IVF yichus for one reason or another. Didn't work out. They can't have children for whatever reason. Yeah? Or they're Satmar Chasidim. And this is not happening. They're not doing this. So could you be Mekayim pruruvu with adoption? So Zatar Shlomo Kluger. Very good. We know the Gemara says that Kol Megadol Yosim B'Soich Beisoich Hi'ili Yoldai. Whoever brings up a Yosim in their house, it's as if they gave birth to them. So that's Rosh Kluger. It's as if you gave birth. You're B'Kayim the Mitzvah Pruvu. However, pretty much all the other poskim say that chazal it's a gadatik. It's meant to, you're a great person. It's like you gave birth to them. But it's not purely, literally halachic. And it's not like you had a child. And Lefi, everybody else besides Rosh Kluger, you have not been Mekayim in the mitzvah of Pruvu.
Doesn't they say that also that someone's Rav? Like the Rav is considered like also...
Yeah, if you have it, your children are like, Tamidim are like Hibbanim. Once again, that's also not like literally. Yeah. Now, time to adopt. Somebody's adopting children. Is it better to adopt a Jewish child or a non-Jewish child?
Jewish.
So there's a tzad to say it's better Jewish. Because a non-Jewish child, you're going to have to get involved with Geirus issues. Whereas a Jewish child, you do not have to get involved with Geirus issues. Furthermore, by a Jewish child, there is a bigger mitzvah of Gemilas Chasadim. You're doing a tremendous chesed to this kid. Imagine the mitzvah of Gemilas Chasadim that you get for bringing up a Jewish kid who had nowhere to be. But a Goyish kid, you're be megayiring him, and there's going to be Gemilas Chasadim, but it's not the same degree. Okay, so is there any disadvantage of a Jewish child? So there's one technical and one practical, meaning like this, that there's disadvantage of a Jewish child. Why is this kid up for adoption, or this baby being up for adoption? Once again, you have to research the case. But a higher degree than normal kids, there's quite, mamzeris is a common issue as to why a kid is up for adoption. Meaning the kid could be a product of incest, or the kid could be a product of Eishes Ish. And sometimes that's why the kid's going up for adoption.
When someone is a mamzer, like what is that actually? What's the nafkamina of being a mamzer?
So the nafkamina of being a mamzer is, the mamzer could be a grocer Rosh Hashiva himself. However, when it comes time to getting married, they're only allowed to marry a mamzeris, or a Geirus, or there's a shtick of marrying a shifcha, which maybe I'll get into soon if I have time for it.
Is their child also a mamzer?
So when the mamzer is marrying a mamzeres or a Geirus, their child is a mamzer or mamzeres. But if you do the shtick of a mamzer marrying a shifcha, if it works, which I may discuss later, then the kid will not be a mamzer. The kid will be an eved, and the eved you could free an eved. I'll get back to that after. Just before we lose the flow. So backtrack. The Jewish child has potential issues of mamzeris. But once again, if you find out that the kid's not a mamzer, then the kid's not a mamzer. Now, that is the technical. On a practical level, there's very few healthy Jewish babies up for adoption. And the reason is because most from families that have a child are not putting the child up for adoption. Most from single women aren't having babies. And most most married people that have babies, those babies do not go up for adoption, generally. It's generally from single mothers. And most Jewish non-from single women are very liberal. And they go for abortions. Most of the adoptions in America come from like the Midwest, Middle America, Republican conservative households that don't do abortions. That's where most of the babies that go for adoption, that's where they're coming from. The places like New York and California, there's not so many babies coming up for adoption because they just abort them. Fine. So therefore, there's very few from babies. I actually heard of Eitzah, though I don't fully understand it. I heard somebody say the best Eitzah to get a Jewish child is to stand outside a adoption center, a place they do a lot of adoptions in Israel. And when you see a Chaloni lady walking towards the place, it's illegal apparently to do this, but whatever. You approach her and you say, "I'll pay you $50,000. Are you pregnant? Do you have a baby? Are you going to abort? I'll pay you $50,000, $30,000, 100,000 shekel, whatever, to have the baby, and I'll adopt the baby." And you could make a deal. So I don't know if that's true, but I heard somebody say that's the mahalch. I don't know how exactly that works because in Eretz I don't think there are abortion clinics. I think it's just in the kupot and the hospitals. So I don't know exactly how that works, but whatever. That's the idea that I heard as the most realistic way of getting a Jewish baby. Okay, so if somebody gets a Goyish baby, which is more common, because if you go to Alabama, there's plenty of. I mean, it's not so easy, but it's much more likely to get a baby that way. Or somebody told me, Rav Goldschmidt's son told me that his father, Rav Goldschmidt, when he was in Russia, was very involved in getting, Russian babies from couples to adopt. So that's also a mahal to go to a country that I guess lower. You don't have to pay as much and whatever, etc. And you get some babies that way. I don't know. Okay. So now, if the baby was born if it's a Goyish baby that's born that's adopted by the Jewish parent, so that baby is not Jewish. However, there's a concept. What do you need for Geirus? So what you need for Geirus is you need a boy needs milah, and a boy and a girl both need tefillah to be going to mikvah and kabbalas mitzvahs. That's what we need, right? Now, for a baby, could you do milah? No problem, right? If it's a boy, no problem. Could you do tefillah? Yeah, you put the baby in the mikvah for 3 seconds. It's okay. It's going to be all right. Don't worry about it. The baby go in the mikvah for 3 seconds. You're okay. What about kabbalas mitzvahs? So a baby cannot do kabbalas mitzvahs. Has no das. How is a baby going to do kabbalas mitzvahs? So what we do is the bezdin does. There's a concept called ger katan. How do you get ger katan? So it's a sugi in the Gemara, right? The way that you get a ger katan is the bezdin does the kabbalas mitzvahs on behalf of the child or the baby. And since the bezdin does the kabbalas mitzvahs, now there's kabbalas mitzvahs, and this kid is Jewish. However, there's one clause that this kid, when he becomes over bar mitzvah and he finds out that he is a ger, that he's a ger katan, that he was really a guy, he has 1 day to decide that he doesn't want to be Jewish. And if he decides over that first day that he doesn't want to be Jewish, he could retroactively, I don't know whether it's mikan lahabal l'mafreya or l'mafreya, I know the sugyas, but he can make himself into a non-Jew from now on. and the Geirus was never chal, and therefore it sounds more like mikan la belamafreya, for those that know what I'm talking about, great. And that is how that works. Okay, now, fine. So that's what you're going to do with this ger katan. I'm going to, just by the way, a little bit of a side point once we're discussing this. There's a big issue, a big problem. This got very political a couple of years ago. How is a chaloni wants to adopt a baby? And, regular, good Israeli nationalistic chaloni adopts the baby and wants the baby to be Jewish. I'm Jewish. Let the baby should be Jewish also. So she will show up to the rabbinah and says, let's be Megayer the baby. Now the rabbinah says, now we have a problem. Where's the Kabbalah's mitzvahs? Nowhere. The parents don't keep kashrus. Nobody here keeps kashrus. Nobody here keeps Shabbos. Where's the Kabbalah's mitzvahs? There's no Kabbalah's mitzvahs in the Chalani family. What are you going to do? Well, wait a second. Isn't Bezdin the one that does the Kabbalah's mitzvahs? Let Bezdin do the Kabbalah's mitzvahs. No, not so simple. How does Bezdin generally do Kabbalah's mitzvahs? It's based on the concept of Zeichen L'Adam Shalei B'fanav. Bezdin is doing it. It's good to be a Yid. Since it's good to be a Yid, Bezdin is saying we know that the kid wants this, and therefore we're accepting on his behalf. Somebody who's going to probably, in height, 99% likely, are going to grow up his life as a Chaloni. Is it good to be a Yid? No. It would have been better off to be a guy, because you're going to be doing all those affairs your whole life. It would have been better off to be a guy, and therefore there's no Zeichen L'Adam Shalei B'fanav, and therefore it wouldn't work. And this is also the same reason that reform conversions and conservative conversions are worthless. Because if you don't have Kabbalah's mitzvahs, that you're really going to keep the mitzvahs, it's all worthless. And it's going to sound funny, but I actually do feel bad for these Chileni people that want to adopt, that want their kid to be Jewish. But you know what? It doesn't work. And this was a hot topic a couple of years ago in politics. But there's no adoption, there's no eitzah for adoption for if you want them to have Geirus. Conversion adoption is very difficult for a Chaleni, and there's not really much to do about it. Fine. Weiter. Now, what if a little bit of a controversial point? What if the parents are modern? Is that a schus? So, L'maisa, where do we draw the line? So L'maisa, the general accepted psak and most Batei Dinim are, as long as they agree to accept some degree of kashrus and some degree of Shabbos, and this is the important one, they agree to send the kid to Jewish education, to Jewish school, to Orthodox school, I should say. Then we say it's good to be a Yid, and we're gonna say that counts as Kabbalah's mitzvahs. They're gonna be Zeichen L'Adam Shalei B'fanav. Fine. Now, this is where another very important question. Somebody adopts a kid. What about yichud? Is there yichud for the parent of the opposite gender? So if you're going to start off Sfar Pshuta, yeah. Listen, there's a heter for a biological parent. You're not a biological parent. Why are you different than anybody else? And therefore, there should be an Isser Yichud. Now, this is going to make life very complicated for any adopted parents. And to make it even worse, you probably will not have the heter in yichud. If you know yichud, follow with me. You're not going to have the heter of bala be'ir because it's liba gaspa. You have a close relationship with this kid. This woman has a close relationship with her son. It's liba gaspa. So you won't even have the heter of bala be'ir. So you have to always keep the door open for the rest. It's going to make life complicated. I'm going to get there in a second. Hold on, we're going to get there in a second. Now, if the kid is, as long as the boy is under 9, or the girl is, if some sheet is under 3, some sheet is under 7, there's no Isser Yichud. We can make it up to 7, there's no Isser Yichud. But once the kid gets older than that, it's going to be a problem. And by the way, I'll just throw in there, once you're talking about the hugging and kissing your kids, same thing, under 9 and under 3, for under 9 for a boy, we'll call it 7 for a girl, it's going to be fine. But older than that, that's going to be a big problem. We're going to discuss that in a minute. Okay, so is this Yichud, just one at a time, is it a problem? So I imagine Rav Shlomo Kluger would say, Ma'baya, it's your kid. Kila Yoldai. So I imagine Rav Shlomo Kluger would be okay with it. But what does everyone else have to say? And by the way, this was a huge, huge issue after the war. Go back 60, 70 years, this was a huge issue. There were tons of these adopted kids all over the place. So the Maisa, the Chazanish, the Stapler, the Chibrina Rav, the Minchas Yitzchak, the Shlomo Zalman, the Sternbach, and the Shevet Levi all say that yichud is aser. So that's a big list. In fact, yeah. Now the Tzitz Eliezer says that Lamaisa, this is a tremendous shasat chach. And he brings down the Levush. The Levush says that why is yichud allowed from a son to the mother? Surely she's a erva to the son. Why is yichud ever allowed? We'll answer because there's that type of relationship, of a mother-son relationship, doesn't bring to Hergal Avera. So still Ezra says, so too, an adopted parent-to-child relationship doesn't bring to Hergal Avera. Further, the Uraim says yichud is allowed by somebody's ishtoi nida. Why? Because Chazal wouldn't have, the Torah couldn't answer it because Roib Seabrook wouldn't be able to handle Isser yichud to their wife. So too over here, Roib Seabrook cannot handle Isser yichud to their adopted children. The Rosh says why by Isha Nida is there no Isser yichud? Dirachecha darchei noyim. Hashem's ways are pleasant. Hashem didn't make his Torah in an unpleasant way. So if Hashem's Torah is pleasant, we can't have Isser yichud to our adopted children. Tzitz does conclude, I know what I'm saying is a big chiddush. However, there's a big shasat chak, and we need to be mekel, and I am mekel as long as the kid was brought in when the kid was very young. I don't know what the cutoff point is exactly, but as long as the kid was brought in very young, he is mekel. L'maisa, most poskim argue in the Tzitz Eliezer. Ramosha said, in basic svara, I would say it's aser. From basic svara, I would say it's aser. However, what can I do? There's a Gemara that's matter. There's a Gemara that's matter. What's the Gemara that Ramosha knew? That the Stapler and the Chazanish and the Chibiner Rav and the Chaim Kedesi didn't know about it and the Shevet Levi didn't know about it. What's this Gemara? So Ramosha says it's Gemara. It's mutter. What's the Gemara? So the Gemara in Saitim and Gimel and Beis that says that stepchildren in the Havamina, they shouldn't marry. You shouldn't have a stepbrother marry a stepsister because people are going to say that siblings got married, and therefore you shouldn't allow them to get married. And the Gemara says, "V'lohi, no, it's not really true that you shouldn't marry because there's a call, and since there's a call, everybody knows about it. It is okay." So Ramosha says like this. Wait a second. What's the Havmin of the Gemara? If they were keeping Isser Yichud between each other, these stepchildren, why would anybody ever think that siblings got married? Everybody would know they weren't natural siblings. So from the fact that the Gemara has a Havamina, that we're going to be choshus that siblings that got married, must mean that step-siblings don't have to keep the Isser Yichud. And therefore Yichud must be allowed. It's in first Gemara. Case closed, Dr. Moshe. Now, that proof is certainly testable. That's debatable. You could argue in that. First of all, you could say that's the whole Havamina of the Gemara. Meaning the Havamina is like, say, people are not going to know. No, Maskana, there's a call. Maybe the reason why there's a call is because of the Isser Yichud. Or maybe the Havamina of the Gemara, maybe we held there was an Isser Yichud. The Havamina is people mind their own business and nobody notices that there's an Isser Yichud. Maskana is people notice. Or perhaps since the Isser Yichud, the whole thing is when nobody notices, maybe the Yichud would be a problem if nobody notices. So maybe you need people to notice, and maybe that couldn't have been the Havamina if nobody notices. Tzarchin, l'maisa that Moshe learns it. Now what about Negia? What about touching? Hugging, kissing your child?
Wasn't that just for step-siblings? That wasn't for adopted parent and child, though.
So there'd be a Kal V'chomer, meaning if step siblings are 2 steps removed. So if step siblings, which are 2 steps removed from each other, are allowed to or have an Isser Yichud to each other, have no Isser Yichud, then surely when there's one less step removed, then surely there would be no Isser Yichud. Fine. Now, what about Negia, touching? Are somebody allowed to touch is a woman allowed to touch her stepson? Is a man allowed to touch his stepdaughter? So Dr. Moshe, before I actually get to Moshe, what do most of the poskim say? Most of those poskim on the previous list said, no, you're not related. It's allowed. Before 9 for a boy and before 3 or 7 for a girl, it'd be allowed. After that, aser. Now, this is difficult to be a good parent without giving your kid a hug. And furthermore, let's say you have some natural kids and some not natural kids. that's really going to be a problem. This kid gets a hug, that kid doesn't. That's not good psychologically, I assume. So Ramosha says, I don't know, it's pashut allowed. Why? The only aser is a negia shel teva. This negia from a stepmother to the son, that we were talking about, not a son that came in at 18. We're talking about a son that came in as a little baby, a little kid. That's not a negia shel teva. That's a motherly negia. And motherly negia is allowed. There's the whole big machlokes. I mean, it's not much of machlokes. It's like everybody against one little shita about whether you're allowed to shake a woman's hand who's not your wife, right? Can you shake their hand? Happens to be Ramosha in the same tshuva says it's also to shake a woman's hand. Don't think that he said he happens to say it's usher, but there is what's the tzad that it's allowed? That's not a negia shel taiva. That's a cordial negia. But in the most supposed to say it's within the category of taiva because it's not under a different category. But when it's a mother-child negia, that's a different category. In Dr. Moshe, it is allowed. The Maisa, as I said, a lot of these poskim do not go with this Ramosha. The Maisa, definitely in America, most people that adopt children do rely on this Ramosha, because if you don't rely on the Ramosha and yichud and negia, it makes life very, very complicated. Now, one should note, playing back to earlier sugya, if we had the case of the donated zera, right? The husband, he couldn't have kids. So we relied on the heterim to use donated zera to get the wife pregnant, right? And is that child the child of the husband? No. There's no relation to the husband. And therefore, that child is an adopted child. So once again, if we're going to be relying on the Ramosha, we could rely on the Ramosha, it's going to be okay. But if you're not going to rely on this Ramosha, so you'd have the Isra Negia and Isra Yichud to that daughter. What about the other way around? Let's say you have the baby came from an egg donor, and there's a boy. Could the birthing mother have yichud and negia with that son? So over there already, I think we're gonna clearly be able to be making like Ramosha. Yeah, because first of all, there's a good side to say that she's the real mother. So she's the suffix mother, suffix not mother. And even if you say she's not the mother, there still is the heter of Moshe. Between that, I think there's enough that we could definitely say that she could for sure be Mekel. Lamaisa, in all these cases, the Olam is Mekel in America. I do not know in Eretz Yisrael whether or not the Olam is Mekel. I have a feeling that most people are Mekel anyways. And it'd be very difficult to adopt children if you're not going to be Mekel with this. But there are tzaddikim out there that do great things. But it would make life very complicated. And thank you for listening.
Yeah.